It's a pleasure to speak with a rock legend, with the heavy metal flute, Ian Anderson of Jethro Tull.
Hi there, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, and looking forward to the to Thick as a Brick Part 2.
Well, I'm looking forward to it too. You know, I don't have a copy yet. I believe they've just arrived in the offices of EMI Records today, and I'm going to receive my first copy, hopefully, in the post tomorrow. But for something that I've worked for 4 long months on, it's interesting when you finally get the end result in your hands after all that time.
Are you involved in the mix-down process of this as well, or?
Well, the actual mixing for the first time in my life was actually mostly carried out by someone else, and that someone else was Stephen Wilson, a band called Porcupine Tree. He remixed the Aqualung album last year, and the original Thick as a Brick also, although that's to be re-released in September of this year. So I asked him if he would be interested in mixing the new album, having ears that are a little bit younger than mine. And he did a great job. So we had some happy moments of discussion and chats on the phone and visits to his studio and he to mine, and he did most of the hard work. So it was all put to bed before Christmas.
What was the idea of doing Thick as a Brick 2? I know it's been about 40 years for the when the original album came out, and I know you got a lot of different players involved this time around with you as well. But what was the idea that came about for doing this one?
Well, having steadfastly refused to think for more than a few minutes about the possibility of a follow-up to Thick as a Brick. Every time I've been asked over the many years by record companies or journalists or fans, I've always said, no, I don't want to go back to 1972 and have a moment of wallowing in nostalgia. And it wasn't really until Christmas of 2010, January 2011, when finally I got the angle that I was looking for. I mean, essentially, what would Gerald Bostock, the fictitious child poet who notionally wrote the lyrics back in 72, what would he be doing today in 2012? How might his life have turned out? What various courses might have he chosen to follow? And that kind of set me interesting. Set me being interested to the point of having a bit of a passion about it over a period of a few weeks as I started to write it. And I got really, really excited about it after I had the first, I guess, half of it written. The rest of it was like really powering along. I had a really good period of 2 or 3 weeks of intensive writing and preparation, and it all went to a pretty good conclusion by around March, when I had some demos that I did of it all, and then we took the next few months being on the road doing various shows with Ian Anderson and some Jethro Tull shows too here and there, and then it became reality in November of last year. But it is really essentially, I guess, looking at what things could happen to any of us, not just Gerald Bostock.
A lot can happen in 40 years. Now, the one thing I have seen with this album, they actually have a track listing. It's not like you have back in the days of vinyl, a side 1 and a side 2. So did you write this in like 17 different parts, or how is the writing of this different from the first time you did Thick as a Brick?
Well, it wasn't really different at all. It was a series of musical sections that are developments from each other. There are a limited number of themes which get reiterated, developed, and perhaps, quite often things crop up again in a different context, in a different lyrical environment. But it is a continuous flow piece of music. But, I have to give people choice in 2012. Not everybody wants to sit and listen to 53 minutes and 47 seconds or whatever it is all the way through in one hit. So I decided I would put ID points in for all the different musical movements within it. Just as if you go and buy Beethoven's Ninth Symphony, there are ID points on the CD, different movements. You can identify them and skip to them. So even the grandest of classical music is these days tends to be broken up into more bite-sized portions. because we like to snack on music these days. We don't necessarily sit down to a 2-hour banquet.
Yeah, it's a lot different than laying down an album and then just letting it go. Now let me skip ahead to this track. Let me go to this track.
Yeah. Well, as I say, it's a matter of choice. People can listen to it in bits, or they can listen to it continuously. When it also is released alongside the original Thick as a Brick in vinyl in September of this year, then the vinyl version will be unbroken music on each of the two sides. It won't have any ID points or any convenient little group of grooves where you can drop the needle in or lift it up. It'll be the way it was written, I guess, as continuous music.
I'm looking at your itinerary of tour dates this year. Are you planning to play both albums in their entirety?
Yes.
Something that's like 40 minutes and 50 minutes long, and I guess it comes with rehearsal and being a musician. How the heck do you remember all this?
Well, with difficulty, because I guess the first half of side one of the original Thick as a Brick, I'm fairly familiar with all that music because we've played that stuff on and off on lots of concerts over the years. Mm-hmm. But second half of side one and all of side two is territory that's not been explored since, indeed, probably somewhere around late November, beginning of December in 1972. We haven't played it since then, so I haven't played it since then. So it is a big job of memory, and also, of course, there's the new album. And by the time you've top and tailed all of that with the audio, visual, and other theatrical elements, I mean, it's a 2-hour show, which is pretty intense, with a 20-minute intermission, of course, because the aging bladder needs relief. I'm talking about our audience rather than myself here, but yes, it's part of the challenge. I think is to really focus the mind and focus the body and the energies on doing this kind of a project while I can. I mean, let's face it, I'll be 65 by the time I come to play this in America, and that's. I feel okay about it now. I don't stop to think about it, really. But I'm sure 5 years down the line, this would probably be beyond me to do.
Mm-hmm. Now, there is no live... I mean, I know some live recordings have come out on, like, Bursting Out and on the later CD versions of Thick as a Brick. But did you guys ever record the early versions when you did the full album? Or did you have to track down bootlegs?
That was a period of time when then manager Terry Ellis really thought that we should be fairly elusive when it came to recording any live performances, so there was nothing done for radio or television at that period of time. And it wasn't really until about 1978 that some live recordings appeared again, notably from Madison Square Gardens. And with a big gap of about 5 years when there was nothing really. People didn't have their smartphones to record a concert on video and loft it up to YouTube an hour later, like they do today. So there are a few bootlegs of really, really bad quality tape. But in 1972, it was, I think, a little early even then for cassette tape. So it wasn't until later that we started seeing a lot more in the way of bootleg audio recordings of Jethro Tull music. I think 72 is probably some of the earliest stuff, but there's very little of it out there on the internet to choose from.
Is it distracting when you're at a show and you see people with their cameras and their iPhones and their smartphones trying to record your show?
Well, yeah, it's like being at a Nazi rally, because whenever I walk on stage, particularly at outdoor shows, it seems like when I walk out that everybody's giving me the old Nazi party Heil Hitler salute, but it is in fact they're just holding up their cell phones, so they can either get video of it or they've just called Grandad and said, "Hey, I'm at the Tull concert. Check this out." So that's the reality, and it's a little strange because sometimes it feels like people are more interested in grabbing a little piece of you for their camera or for their audio files or to put up on YouTube than they are actually interested in listening to the concert. So it is a strange phenomenon, but it's part of the world we live in, and I guess you just have to accept it as I tend to do.
Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't dream of doing that at somebody's concert. I feel so embarrassed to be holding up my camera or phone, trying to take pictures. If that's something, I mean, that's not something I would do, but I understand that other people do it. It annoys many people. I think many members of our audience get pretty upset with the the incessant flashing of cameras, because people don't tend to read the instructions. They don't know how to switch the flash off.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's pretty off-putting for everybody when it keeps happening right next to you if you're sitting there trying to watch a concert.
That's why I get a band's DVD. I got Living with the Past and all that. So, it's if I want a recorded version, that's what I'm going to get. If I'm going to go to your show, and I've seen you a number of times, I'm not going to, be distracted with trying to figure out a phone or do video.
Well, there's a slight benefit, to me, because, like every musician, I'm not perfect. I quite often, I will play a really bad note and think, how did that happen? And so I go back to my hotel room, wait for about an hour, go on YouTube, and then I can usually find the bad note because someone has raced home to be first to put it up online.
You can critique yourself.
I get to examine my failures, usually within a couple of hours of doing the concert, which is quite educating. And I cry myself to sleep most nights.
Anything else on the set list we should expect with your tour this year? I mean, you're going to be pulling stuff from like Aqualung and War Child or some of the later albums?
After 2 hours of doing Thick as a Brick 1 and 2 and taking a few curtain calls, it's an early bed for all of us. I think we'll all be running for the exit doors after that. No, there's no other repertoire this year. That's
okay.
You maybe have to... Maybe wait for another year, and then we'll be out and about doing, perhaps a best of Jethro Tull tour, which is the sort of thing we play usually when it's a Jethro Tull build concert with Martin Barr playing lead guitar. Martin, like me, has his own projects this year to pursue again while he's still just about young enough to do them, and we'll see what 2013 brings us in the way of interesting. Concert opportunities with Jethro Tull, but it is, as I say, when it's a Jethro Tull show, it tends to be, the standard kind of classic repertoire that I guess some of the less imaginative fans are very happy to hear again and again and again. But personally, I like once in a while to get my teeth into something a little more, a little bit more of a challenge, and but I have to do this while I still have my own teeth.
Yeah. Yeah, I know we're running short on time, so I got two quick questions.
Yeah.
One, I know you've praised Led Zeppelin, and I know when you first toured in 1970, I always got the impression that they weren't big fans of you, though. But I know you've thanked them in interviews.
I think there's a friendly rivalry, but let's face it. I mean, we were the opening act for Led Zeppelin in '69, and we played with them a few times in the next 2 or 3 years, and they were a great rock band. I learned a lot from them about dynamics, about showmanship. It was good to pick up on that when we were just a little old blues band, or not much more than that when we first went to America in '69. So, it was an opportunity to learn something from them. And being perhaps not just a rock band ourselves, having a little bit more of the acoustic and the more ethnic and folky side of things, it was kind of interesting that Zeppelin also went that route on later albums, and subsequently, with Page and Plant and Robert Plant on his own, and tended to explore more musically diverse courses, which I think is part of the maturity of those guys, and hopefully most rock artists growing up. They don't eschew what they did in earlier years. They have a great respect for their earlier work and a great love for it, but at the same time, you can't stand still. You've got to move on.
Yeah, well, you've done that through your albums.
I think Zeppelin, and maybe we did too. We perhaps showed that it was okay to do a few acoustic tracks, or some Indian influences, or whatever it might be. So yeah, we kind of followed quite parallel paths, Zeppelin and Tull, at least while Zeppelin was still around. Sadly, they were unable to continue for obvious reasons.
Yeah. And one last question. I own all your CDs, and I was digging up some music videos, and I came across the music video for Kissing Willie. What can you?
Not one of my finest hours. That no.
I love the song. The music video is a little weird.
Yeah, it was a video made by a guy called Storm Thorgerson. I think he worked with Pink Floyd in early years, and he really he was one of the, I guess when in his day he was a sort of avant-garde kind of pop video maker long before the era of MTV. But it was his ambition, he told me, to do something that was a period drama. So he wanted all of this to be depicted in kind of period English garb, sort of, I suppose, 1800s. And I think we were all pretty uncomfortable about the idea, but we indulged his fantasy, which certainly wasn't mine. But yeah, it was kind of an embarrassing pop video, but it was a laugh, but it was a bit Benny Hill.
Yeah, definitely.
It wasn't very refined. I could have been a little, I think, humorous, yes, but not when it's such obvious slapstick kind of humor.
Gotcha. Well, I mean, I love some of the music from that era, that and like This Is Not Love and Rattlesnake Trail, and just some good stuff. But the video, yeah, definitely really odd. Well, Ian, I know you got to go.
Yeah.
It is a pleasure to talk to you so much. One of my favorite artists.